I don't wish to have an argument with Mr. Mathews. I respect the amount of work he's put into this, but I think, in line with what Deputy Costello has just asked him, it's quite clear that Mr. Mathews disagrees with the best expertise internationally and nationally in the analysis that he's put here this morning. And for instance, he clearly disagrees with the Governor of the Central Bank, who is an internationally...
How do I disagree with him?
Please let me make my point.
Explain how I disagree with him.
Please let me make my point. From what we've heard today and what we've heard the last day, you disagree with the Governor of the Central Bank, who is an international expert on banking rescues. He has said that the banks, through the NAMA system and through the government's recapitalisation, will be adequately capitalised by the end of the year. In fact, John Fitzgerald confirmed that this morning from the ESRI.
He didn't. John Fitzgerald said this morning that the banks need more capital than estimated.
Could I please make my contribution, Mr. Mathews? The fact of the matter is that the OECD, the IMF, the EU Commission, the ECB have all stated that NAMA is necessary to address the difficulties which the Irish banks have. And that difficulty has to do with the toxic loans that they have on their books at the moment, which cannot be dealt with other than in the NAMA system at the present time. And I'm interested in what you say.
That's incorrect. That's incorrect, and I think on the record to say something that's incorrect is wrong.
I'm interested in what you say, that the government should adopt an approach subject to the US approach. The US approach would give the banks additional capital to deal with their problem. And, if Mr. Mathews is coming in to us today to say that we should give extra capital to the banks and get them to properly value their land and their assets, well then certainly that's something that I think we've learned enough from the banks in this country to date that we shouldn't give them any such responsibility.
You're quite right. We'd give them nothing. We invest and get it back with a profit if you do it correctly. And everybody who understands properly the financing of banks and such institutions, the elements of their balance sheets, knows this.
You can answer my points when I'm finished. The other point I'd like to make is that the IMF have stated that NAMA is an essential component of restoring the Irish financial system. And, I believe that the IMF advice in this respect is of critical importance. And, I would put it to Mr. Mathews that really he's in here today disagreeing with all of the best expertise, such as I mentioned, the OECD, the IMF, the EU Commission, the ECB, our own central bank governor, in the analysis that he's giving. And I'd put it to him that he's wrong, and while he's very sincere in the case that he's making, it is causing, perhaps for anyone that would listen to it, some confusion. And I disagree with Deputy Costello. There's nothing of any value in the prognosis that we're getting, which may be close to the Labour prognosis. It is clear that the best way forward is NAMA. The banks, as I said already, can use the NAMA bonds as collateral from the ECB. That's not to suggest that they have to give out the money. If they have NAMA bonds which is used as collateral from the ECB on their books, they can go to private investors. It improves their whole capital base. And that's the reason why the ECB is critical, and the fact that we can borrow this money if we want it from the ECB at 1.5% is critical to the bank's ability to go out there and either use it as collateral with the ECB or indeed find investment from private investors. And there's nothing that I have heard from Mr. Mathews on the last day he's been here or today to counteract that. And my final point to Mr. Mathews is this, that look, the analysis he has made is wrong, and I haven't seen anybody else, to quote himself, experts who has suggested that it's right.
Can I deal with some of those observations?
We have to vacate this room at 15:15. It's now 10 past, so we have 5 minutes.
The first thing is, just as you didn't understand yesterday under Miles Dungan's question on the ECB and its role of how NAMA bonds might be used as collateral, it has happened again today. You don't understand my points. The key points, I said, were recapitalisation of our viable banks would require 17.5 billion of capital, not all of which the state will put up, but bondholders in the two big banks would also be directed to subscribe. That's the first. The second is Anglo and Nationwide should be closed. Why? Because by keeping them open, the state, us, the citizens, are paying an unnecessary minimum of 17 billion. And these things can all be proved. You mightn't understand them, but they're all proven. And the experts who understand it, who have experience of financial balance sheets of banks and loan portfolios and the recoverabilities, all agree. The advice is that, well, sorry, you talked about the, I'm dealing with your points. The international, I can name them all. There's Carl Whelan, Konstantin Gurdjieff, Brian Lucy, Colin McCarthy, accountants who are members of my institute, and many others, business people, and many bankers who I know. I've talked about this, and I'm happy that it's fundamentally sound. The international experts you talk about are unfamiliar with Ireland. Merrill Lynch, what do they know about the lending practices of our banks here and what markets they lent into? Nothing. What could they be expected to find out in 4 days? Nothing. There were at least, I could name off the top of my head, 12 people, individuals here, who could have assessed the situation of the balance sheets of the Irish banks. I've done it on one page, you got it. You also got this document, which was the alternative to NAMA. Why did your government say there was no alternative when there was? It had been submitted, and it is the best platform for getting the right way out of this crisis. Your government has been hell-bent on just repeating a mantra that there's no other show in town, that it will increase liquidity, and as Deputy Costello has shown, every examination and every question and the answers to all of them show that it wouldn't. While it might have been technically possible, it was highly improbable and hasn't happened 24 months later. And the Americans have done the right thing because they've been able to actually get a return on their investment for the money that they put into the banks and the institutions over there. And the same with Britain. Britain actually have contained the losses because they've been able to sell back to the markets, who are now more confident that the correct picture has emerged and that the banks are getting on with the recovery's work, through a mixture of direct capital investment and insurance programs that work and that have been thought through. Please, I'm asking everybody, this is not a matter of political economy. It's less political and more economy, more honesty, more integrity, less cronyism. Please step aside if you don't understand what's going on. Please give the 450,000 people who are unemployed a chance to get back into employment, because the economy can take traction again. Please get on with the work of resetting and repricing and correcting the asset prices and rents of this country. Across the road in the Carluccio restaurant, that asset was stupidly priced up to a year ago at 20 million. It's now correctly priced at 3 million. That's the sort of level of price correction that's needed. Let's be honest, please. It doesn't give me any pleasure talking like this and having to do all the work. There's an opportunity cost to me in income terms. But I don't want my country. I've got boys in their mid-20s who are now going to be actively seeking work, and they'll probably have to go abroad. I have a daughter who's just done her leaving cert. I represent a very common cross-section of this country, and we've let it down big time, the people of our generation, by being complacent, by being cosy, by not being honest, by not facing up to the truth of the situation, recognising what the problem was, measuring it, getting the correct answers, and being humble and getting the right advice. And a lot of it is here under our noses. And going abroad for brand names like Merrill Lynch, PwC, KPMG, and so on and so forth. This time last year, Chairman, sitting in this chair, Jones Lang LaSalle talked up the long-term economic value of property.